Hello everybody. It is September 13th, 2025 here in the United States of America. And in today's video I would like to talk about the assassination of Charlie Kirk and why revolutionary politics in the West is so destructive, and why these revolutionary politics led to something like this happening. You know, a pretty horrific tragedy that we witnessed 2 days ago. So, as everyone out there, I'm sure, is aware, the conservative political activist Charlie Kirk was shot and killed at a university in Utah while doing one of his, I wouldn't call it a lecture, but he would sit and have open debates with basically whoever would want to speak to him about a variety of topics, mostly involving social conservatism, economics, things like that. Charlie Kirk was a very socially conservative man, but in all reality, he wasn't a radical. His form of conservatism was, I'd say, very milquetoast American conservatism, like standard American conservatism. Very pro-capitalism, pro-individual freedoms, pro-limited government. He was against things such as abortion, the current gender ideology, or this current modern leftist view of gender and what gender is, and gender being malleable. He had a very conservative, traditional Christian view on those things. Also, he was fairly pro-Israel. I'm not sure if he was I would say he was a dispensationalist. I'd say maybe borderline on that issue. But a lot of left-wing activists viewed Charlie Kirk as the devil incarnate, as target number one, as their greatest enemy. And one of the reasons why is Charlie was a very well-connected individual within the American right wing, within the American conservative movement. He was actually very good friends with President Donald Trump, Vice President J.D. Vance, the Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, I believe, was good friends with them, and quite a few prominent figures within the American conservative movement, both fellow activists and politicians alike. And he also built Turning Point USA from the ground up at the age of 18, and he was, I'd say, very instrumental in the modern American conservative movement that has made great strides in the last few years of really bringing in more of a youth vote, making conservatism much more attractive to young people. He was very good at articulating ideas. He was very good at debating. One of his greatest strengths was, no matter how contentious a debate would get, Charlie would keep his cool very well, and stick to his points very well, and not become emotional. Now, whether or not you agreed or not with what Charlie was saying, though, those were his greatest strengths. So if Charlie was having a debate with a reasonable person, his demeanor, he had such a demeanor that often the other person would end up finding themselves having like a pleasant conversation with him. And he actually did change quite a few minds on college campuses, again, with his approach to things and how articulate he was on many of these issues. And that made him, I guess you could say, a prime symbolic target for modern American political revolutionaries on the left. Now, Charlie overall was, I'd say, he conducted himself as a good man, a good person, an honorable person, someone who would treat people with kindness and respect and dignity. Cenk Uygur, a very well-known person on the left, a very well-known progressive, just spoke about how Charlie invited him to an event because he disagreed with them, and Charlie was very cordial and kind to him when many people on the right don't have the patience for Cenk because of how outspoken Cenk can be on quite a few things. People would say that Cenk is very borderline obnoxious on with how he conducts himself. Yet Charlie had enough patience with him to actually invite him to an event, have a conversation with him, and Cenk actually found out that they agree on quite a few things, like paid family leave, corruption, and whatnot. Funny enough, there's actually a pretty strong streak of populism now within, I'd say, the more reasonable progressive camp and the MAGA camp. There's actually a fair bit of overlap on several major issues that these two groups have now, which is pretty remarkable. So, why though? I've gone over why he was disliked so much, but how have we gotten to the point where a kind man such as Charlie, with a wife and two young children, is gunned down, murdered, assassinated in such an awful, horrible fashion, and why it appears to be a young 22-year-old kid. I believe his name is Tyler. I forget his last name. Forgive me. Robinson, maybe? Could be wrong, but it appears to be a very young revolutionary of sorts, a direct product of our colleges, our university system. I'm assuming he's somebody that within the last several years maybe became a leftist and became very heavily indoctrinated and very fervent in his beliefs, and was probably sucked into the idea of a revolution to free the country from tyranny. And when someone has like these kinds of beliefs that somebody is standing in the way of finally achieving freedom, finally achieving political end to things, finally freeing the country from oppression, evil, and tyranny. Like, this is how they view it in their mind. Then, taking someone's life, even if they're a reasonably good person with children, is something that they don't give a second thought to. And this is, I'd say, one of the biggest dangers of revolutionary politics in general in the West today is many of these people, because religion and national pride and family life and community have been stripped away from much of the country due to our current cultural decline ever since the 60s, that you find a lot of young people that don't have anything to live for other than revolutionary politics. It becomes their religion, it becomes their identity, it becomes everything they live for. They eat, sleep, and breathe it. It's all they can talk about. It's all they think about. It gives them a purpose, a meaning in life, and a reason to get out of bed in the morning. The same kind of religious fervor that somebody who is a religious person would have, except it's directed more towards politics, and it kind of becomes a religion in and of itself, because there's this goal they've been told that can be achieved, and that is the building of this better world, this utopia, free of bigotry, free of racism, equal for everybody. This evil specter of white supremacy finally done away with, and this golden age can finally be upon us, and their economic their suffering can finally be ended. They'll finally be happy. They'll get everything they want. Finally have a meaning in life to attach themselves to. Finally, maybe not feel this crushing weight of an unfair economic system. Finally have all that ripped away. That is their goal. That is it's like an eschatology. It's kind of like their eschatology, I guess. That's the promised land at the end of a long road. And when you hold these kinds of beliefs, and this is the only thing that you have in your life, and the people that are standing in the way of that become enemies to be destroyed without mercy. And we've seen a lot of these young college kids that are indoctrinated into this belief system become some of the most vicious people you could possibly imagine, that would, if given the opportunity and given permission, would wipe out their neighbors, their own families. Anyone who their revolutionary comrades would point the finger at and tell them to eliminate, they would do it without hesitation. And they say as much, And I think this hollowing out of Western society over the last, it's been longer than 100 years. I'd say it's the Enlightenment, but the slow hollowing out of Western society since the Enlightenment has continually led people down a revolutionary path to give themselves meaning, to finally build that better world that they've been seeking ever since the West, I say, sort of lost its identity, ever since the old monarchies fell, ever since the Industrial Revolution and this promise of endless personal possibilities happened, and ever since the stripping away of traditional values and beliefs, you've had one revolutionary system after another that's ended in absolute horror. And it seems to be we're in the beginning stages of another one of those cycles. I think most of these people don't know how to run a civilization. They're far too emotional and murderous to do it. They're not pragmatic in any way, shape, or form. They're very emotionally driven. I'm not sure if this young man really thought about the ramifications of his actions. Killing somebody like Charlie Kirk, who was viewed as a moderate, and doing so in such a public and brutal fashion, has had a horrific backlash. The average American is disgusted by what they've seen outside of these revolutionary circles, and outside of, I'd say, I hate to use this word, but hardcore boomer leftists and college radicals. The entire country is disgusted by this. People are being fired left and right over it. I think it's maybe dawning on some people, that you can't. If you live under, and the United States actually still has a fairly well-established structure to our society despite its problems. That when you come out as a murderous revolutionary, it's perfectly fine with killing a man in front of his children and his wife and laughing about it and mocking him. People become disgusted with the callousness of it. At the end of the day, the average American wants stability. They want to be able to walk down their street safely. They want low taxes. They don't want involved in foreign wars. They want a safe and cohesive society that they can feel comfortable raising their children in. They don't want some violent, horrific, perpetual revolution that feels perfectly fine gunning down a father of two and a husband in broad daylight simply because he is reiterating some fairly milquetoast conservative ideas that I would actually dare to say most people in the country, if you really ask them about it, outside of these revolutionary circles, would probably agree with a lot of it and not have any, even if they didn't, would have no real animosity towards Charlie Kirk. And I think this is one of the biggest mistakes the Democratic Party has made since the 60s, is courting these revolutionary college kids as their new voting base, because now they're stuck with a bunch of vicious lunatics as their voting base, and every Democratic strategist out there has to be ripping their hair out at this point, seeing how disgusted the average American is with this and the things they're saying. This is disastrous for them, and they know it. A lot of these people are probably horrified by what happened to Charlie Kirk as everybody else, but then you look at the Senate floor when Mike Johnson wanted a moment of silence for him, and you had several Democratic politicians come out and interrupt it immediately, and the average American sees that and they're sickened by it. They don't want this kind of a political environment in this country, and the Democratic Party is stuck between a rock and a hard place right now because now they're courting a fairly significant voter base that behaves like this. But the fact is, they still need people in the middle. They need traditional progressives, and they need more open-minded people on the right to win elections. This is absolutely what they need at this point, especially with immigration being limited. or the idea of mass amnesty being off the table. They need a voter base, but now they're stuck with this group of revolutionaries that the country is fed up with. It's just the reality of it. And seeing this current political discourse lead to something so awful and so horrific and so public, I think has made a lot of people finally pause and say, well, wait a minute. I think this rhetoric went too far. Now we see the real world consequences of labeling more than half the country as people that are a literal threat to everything. I've seen quite a few prominent progressives and leftists come out and say, well, we got to pump the brakes on this. Enough's enough. They see the direction this is heading, and I'm sure they realize what I just said here too about the future of their party or the futures of their movements with these kinds of people attached to it. This has to be reined in. The university system has been churning out sociopathic, nihilistic, violent revolutionaries for a long time, and I wouldn't even blame the university system as a whole. I say a lot of this is because of the degradation of our culture too. We have a country filled with nihilistic, angry, depressed people searching for meaning, and they find it within these revolutionary political groups. And that's one thing I think that needs to be addressed, is that we have to bring our civilization back to having a healthy culture and a healthy society. We have to bring back its core foundations and do so in a way where people feel free to embrace them. They feel like it's giving them peace and order. It's not oppressing them. And the only way I think we're going to have social stability is to accept that there's certain societal norms that just across human history generally need to be kept in place, or else, again, we face a violent and bloody revolution. And just to add on to this as well, let's look at the French Revolution. You had, I think, people that were of a very similar mindset that started the French Revolution, and they were murderous, tyrannical, awful people that began to kill indiscriminately anyone that was in the way of their great revolution was a target. And things got so bad that one of the former revolutionaries himself essentially reinstituted the old system to bring order and stability back, because the average French person didn't want those things. They want order, they want stability, they want peace and a stable society. And Napoleon had to come in and forcefully reinstate that while still pretending he was a revolutionary. If things spiral out of control, that's what is essentially going to happen here. Even like with the Soviet Revolution, things got very, very bad in the first 2 decades of it, and eventually things were, especially after the death of Stalin, reined in and reassessed. None of these revolutions really end up with the world that these people expect. They end up having to be reined in by their own eventually, because more reasonable people within these movements see the direction it's heading and need to pump the brakes quickly before they lose everything. But that's really all I wanted to talk about in this video. Rest in peace to Charlie Kirk. It's good to pray for his soul. Please do so. May his soul find its way to paradise. May the Lord have mercy upon it, and may the Lord have mercy upon his wife and his children. This is an awful, terrible thing, and I think everyone out there who is religious should be praying for this country, that this stops here and this stops now and doesn't escalate out of control, because I don't think anybody would like the end result of that. Anyways, I'm actually doing 2 videos today. I wanted to get this one out of the way now, and then I'll be posting the second one later about the Israel strike on Doha that targeted the Hamas negotiating team. But hope everyone out there has a good one, and if you like this content, please like and subscribe. And until next time.